Welcome to the Baseball Together podcast, baseball family. For those of you new to the show, we are here to raise money for the nonprofit organization Called Up, whose mission is to give disadvantaged young ball players the equipment they need to play the game we all love. We also want to unite communities by improving or rebuilding baseball facilities in areas suffering economic or environmental hardship. At this time, you can support by purchasing t-shirts and other baseball-related apparel and accessories from 9plusus.com. 10% of all these sales go to the cause. Again, that's 9plusus.com. The number 9, plusus.com. 9plusus.com. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Baseball Together podcast, brought to you by 9plusus.
Welcome back, baseball family. We're excited to have you here on the next episode of the Baseball Together podcast. As usual, I am Brig, and I am here with my good buddy Brad.
As usual.
So we're going to talk about a number of things today, but the first thing is this wacky trade deadline and all the shenanigans that went on.
Shenanigans is a perfect word for it.
It was shenanigans, man. But before we get into that, I have just a quick personal story I want to share. It's not exactly personal. It's just a local interest piece. I live in upstate South Carolina, and my current hometown American Legion team just won the state title yesterday.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Post 115 won only 2 games last season, by the way.
Wow.
And then 2 years ago, they didn't even field a team.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So this is huge. Absolutely huge. And they came in. They had already secured a spot at regionals down in Tampa. So that was no big deal. Whether they won or lost the state title game wouldn't have mattered. They'd still go to regionals. But you know what? It always matters, right? It always matters.
Oh yeah, you always want to win it. You always want to win a tournament you're playing in, no matter what.
And then you want to go into the regionals knowing that you sealed the deal in the previous one, right? Like,
yeah.
So anyway, we're all very proud of them, and they beat Fort Mill. It was a 7-3 ball game Friday night. That was last night. So congratulations to Post 115 and the American Legion here in the Upstate, the Greer team. Let's see. I think the Tampa game starts. I don't know. I don't see where that is.
Post 115, is that like your mile marker?
I don't know how that works either.
Your freeway mile marker?
I don't know.
Because our Legion team, we were the Cardinals. And I think we had like old school Memphis Redbirds hats.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool, and we had like red and blue.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite part of the uniform was the candy striped strips.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
That's awesome.
everybody wore the pant legs up all summer long.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty rad.
That's rad.
But no, 2 wins for a Legion team can make for a long summer. And for those guys coming back, that's awesome. They came back and won state. That's a big deal.
Yeah, to go from no
to those guys.
Program at all. Yeah, no program at all to 2 wins the next season, and then now they're state champs. So
that's great.
They got a new head coach this season. His name's Chad Hart, and he's, like I said, first year coach. And the very first thing he said when he got on the team, he posted on social, we're going to win state. So that's
awesome.
A lot,
That's
and
cool.
they pulled it off. So very exciting. Yeah. Hopefully they make it all the way to the World Series, the American Legion World Series.
That'd be great. And I think for us, we won state our summer, but we kind of expected to. But we didn't have the competition that you guys have down there. So I think that's a big deal, because I'm sure there's a lot of really good teams down there.
Oh yeah, just because you can play baseball all year long here, basically.
Yeah,
and they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a huge deal.
So that's really cool.
So congratulations to the Greer American Legion team.
All right, should we get into these trade deadline shenanigans?
Let's talk trade shenanigans.
All right, so the first one I want to talk about, let's just get into the meat of it. Greinke to the Astros.
Oh, did you see that thing I posted on the page?
I did. So Brig posted on the VIP page. For those of you who are on it, I don't know if you saw it or not. Anybody who's not part of the VIP group, come find us. 9+ us VIPs. Ask to be added. We'll add you. No problem. But it was this short video. It was longer than a GIF, but it was a little short video from Avengers Infinity War. It was Thanos as he's putting the final Infinity Stone in the gauntlet, but somebody had
superimposed
or photoshopped AJ Hinch's head on top of Thanos, basically saying the Astros are gonna wreck.
Well, and then they put Greinke's face on top of the last Infinity Stone.
Oh, that's right. Greinke was the Mind Stone. That's right.
And then all of the other pictures are listed where their faces were in their different stone spots, and so it was like this. That was perfect because that's exactly how it feels. Everybody should feel that way now. We might have to redo our entire prediction episode now because I think we're going to be hard pressed to see the Astros not go the distance. I don't know.
And I'm going to say I don't think we do. Because I'm not going to change anything.
Whoa, okay.
So
me neither then, Brad.
Let me tell you why. So I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I think it was, we were talking about guys who kind of maybe struggle a little bit in the postseason. And I specifically mentioned Greinke's name, how he has talked about how he gets nervous in the postseason. And maybe he'll be just fine this year because he's not going into this postseason as an ace. He doesn't have that pressure on him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with especially Verlander, who's like the vet and like the guy. And then you've got Garrett Cole. And then you've got Wade Miley, who's pitching really well this year. He could very well be the fourth guy in that rotation.
Yep.
And that four-man rotation could be it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if that's the case, they may not lose a game, you know?
That's right.
They might go 3-4-4. They might just win 11 straight games, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah. And
they very well could be Thanos. But on the other hand, if Greinke's nerves do surface in the postseason, I think the wheels might fall off. And if Miley comes back down to earth, because he's a year or so removed from Tommy John surgery, and so this workload that he's taken on this year, I'm not saying that he's necessarily gonna tire from that his arm's gonna tire, but it's a possibility. You know.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not worried about Verlander and Cole. I mean, that's pretty much 2 guaranteed wins right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And depending on how Hinch manages his bullpen, you know, because we saw that a couple years ago or last year, that managing his bullpen came back and bit him. So I'm not going to necessarily give them. I'm not going to even put them in the World Series right now because they've got to get through the Yankees. They've got to get through. They're going to have to get through the Indians still, who are a good team, right?
Yeah.
So
and maybe the Twins, depending on how the seeding works out.
Yes, possibly the Twins.
Because the Twins are rock solid.
Oh yeah, the Twins. The Twins will hit home runs off anybody right now.
Yeah,
they don't care who you are.
They don't care.
You could be Thanos throwing fastballs up there. They're gonna hit a home run off.
That's right. No, it's it's maddening.
Yeah, they're insane. So I'm gonna pump the brakes on the Astros right now, and that might just be my cynical take on the Astros.
Okay, well, me and the rest of the league, we're just going to be over here in a fetal position.
That's
in
fine.
The corner. You all can come to my house and we'll just cower.
That's fine. You can call me Captain America. I'm going to stand up to the Astros.
Okay, Captain America. Blackjack Brad. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I got to be honest though. This was the most boring trade deadline ever.
Yeah, until like 5 minutes before.
And then it was still boring. Like
And then my phone like blew up, but I was still like, but where are the blockbusters?
there weren't really any blockbusters. The biggest
none.
talk the whole time, in my opinion, the Strowman trade was bizarre.
And that happened days before.
I know, but it was.
Yeah, I was convinced that the reason the Mets made that trade so early was I was sure they were going to flip him.
You and everybody else.
No business. They have no business just holding on to a guy like that, unless they're just trolling the entire league.
I think that's what they did. They all went, no. You can't have it.
He is mine.
Yeah, that's all they did. They blew a big old raspberry.
I'm sure they did. Well, and then they just dangled Syndergaard out there to everybody too. Like, you want him?
Yeah.
Come and get him. And then an hour before, it's like, no,
you can't have it.
Have him either. He is ours.
If we can't win games, then you can't have our players.
If we can't win games, then nobody can.
That's how it felt. It still feels that way.
It does. That the Mets are truly the little brother of not just the Yankees, but the entire MLB.
Oh my gosh. Just
no.
Nipping at your heels, want to go where you're going.
Yeah.
When they don't get their way, then nobody gets their way.
That's right. Exactly. Like, I truly do not know what the Mets are doing, what they're thinking by holding on to both of those guys. Like, they're not going to catch anybody in the wild card. Right now they're 5 games back. This is Saturday morning. They're 5 games back of the Nats and Cubs.
Yeah.
They're not catching either of those teams.
No.
I don't care what happens to I don't care if neither of those teams make the playoffs, like make the wild card game. They're not catching those teams no matter what.
Nope.
Like, they have no reason to be holding on to Strowman, no reason to be holding on to Syndergaard. Like, I'm not huge on prospects, but you're not winning this year. Plan for a year or two down the road. Like, that's what the Mariners are doing. The Mariners traded a couple of pitchers because they said, like, the plan was never to win this year. So, Mike Leake, who I claimed I could probably hit a bomb off.
Yeah, you did.
A few weeks ago, who went 24 outs, 24 straight outs. He's 3 outs away from a perfect game a couple weeks ago. So sitting there watching that, I was like, oh, that's neat.
There's your crow, Brad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I ate it. Don't worry.
Oh, good.
As I was watching that. He got traded for a couple prospects. So the Mariners, I felt like, did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's what the Mets should be doing. Like,
yeah.
Get a couple guys and those were guys who I think will be ready to come up in a year or two.
Right.
But no, I don't know what the Mets are doing besides just like holding, like, just like stockpiling guys that they don't want the rest of the league to have, you know?
Yeah.
Because they held on to Diaz, who it was rumored that he was on the block. Who hasn't had a great year, but he could go somewhere and do well, I still feel like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The Mets are weird.
Yes.
So weird.
They are weird.
Yeah.
They are weird.
And they're run by their GM is a former agent.
Right.
So I wonder if this is just like a thing the agents do, is they're just like, no, just hold on to everything, because that's what the Lakers do too. Is that I can't think of his name. Anyway, the Lakers GM.
Yeah, the one who's in basketball.
Yeah, he's a former agent too, and he's not one to really deal with people. So it's kind of like, all right, I guess we've seen the blueprint so far, 0 for 2 with agents running teams.
Yeah.
If your team hires an agent or former agent as a GM, panic.
That's it. When is Scott Boras going to buy a team or GM a team?
Oh, gosh, hopefully it's like the Astros or something, so they stop winning.
I just was sitting here thinking about all the different agents that we know, right? Because there are very few that are even household names. Scott might be the only one. Anyway, because I bring him up
the only one in baseball.
Yeah, I bring him up in conversation, and Tiffany's like, "How do you know who that is?" I'm like, "Oh, how do you not?" Right?
because he makes sure that you know who that is.
It's hilarious. Like Don King with boxing, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he just doesn't have the hair.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's baffling. The other thing that's baffling to me, we'll stay in New York with this, is the Yankees. And it was their lack of movement, too, in the opposite direction. They didn't go get anybody.
Bro, they couldn't go get anybody.
They should have. Yeah, they could have. So, all right, hold the phone. You ready for this?
Let's calm down.
I'm literally holding my phone right now. So, the Yankees were offered Robbie Ray from the D-backs for 3 prospects. What did the Yankees need? And Robbie Ray, by the way, is a pitcher.
Yeah.
What did the Yankees need to get? And
starters.
Need to get
at least one.
Robbie Ray's a starter. Yeah. Robbie Ray's a starter. He's a good starter. What are those 3 prospects going to do for you?
Nothing right now.
Yeah, okay, I understand you've got a little bit of depth in the cooler with some prospects.
A lot of depth right now.
You've got... Yeah. But you're trying to win this year. And as the Yankees, I feel like you need to be focused on this year every year. And I know they've kind of gotten away from that approach a little bit under the younger Steinbrenners, right?
Yeah.
And with Cashman. But if you're trying to win this year, you're not concerned with prospects because you might get 1 out of 10 that hit.
Yeah.
Maybe. Right? If somebody's asking me for 3 prospects for a starting pitcher, which is something I desperately need, I'm saying, yeah, take them out there. The Yankees have proven that they know how to draft. They drafted Judge.
Yeah, for sure.
Drafted Gregorius, right?
Yeah. No, he came from Arizona.
Okay. Either way, though, I mean, they've proven they know how to trade for guys.
And that's the magic. Like, they bring up guys in the system, and then they also trade young.
Yeah, and if nothing else, they can develop guys. Like, they can make moves later and develop guys. They can trade a couple prospects. Like you can trade minor leaguers across and then get somebody who you think you can develop.
That's what we got.
But
Hicks
right now, though, yeah.
Yeah, but right now it's all about winning.
And
win right now.
You've got to win now. And if you need a pitcher, who cares about your farm system? Like, I don't care if your farm system got better. Like, as a fan, I don't care if my farm system got better if I'm contending for a World Series. If come October the Yankees get burned because of their second or third starting pitcher, I would be livid as a Yankees fan. Like, I would be calling for Cashman's head.
We're all confused.
That's how mad I would be.
We all of us are confused. We're trying not to be hurt, and I think what's happening is we're all saying. So, here's the narrative in Yankee fandom that I am aware of. Okay, we believe that the league shut us out.
And that could be true. That could be true. I don't know if it's necessarily the case, just because there was that
that one deal, though. So a lot of the other players that we thought were available, and there was some talk about, they weren't actually available. So the Mad Bum thing, people are like, "How come we didn't pick up Mad Bum?" Well, apparently he had a no Yankees clause in his contract.
So did Greinke.
Greinke
had a no New York clause, not just the Yankees, but the Mets.
So, I mean, there's nothing you could do about that. Like, even though they're available, they're actually not available to those teams. So, then the Marcus Stroman thing, that they talked with the Mets about flipping Stroman to the Yankees, but you know what? It just never happened because the Cashman said it was too expensive, is what he said. Even though they had a lot of discussion about it. And what kills me is that these teams the asking prices were so steep. I mean, they really were, whether it be prospects or cash, whatever, right? I mean, it's really, really expensive. Mm-hmm. The market was really vicious for the Yankees, which is funny. And
I think the market was just vicious in general, just because teams know who the few contenders are.
Totally.
And I think that the lower tier teams weren't necessarily willing to help anybody out, even though for some reason every year teams are willing to help out the Astros. I don't understand what that is. Like, you're helping them build a dynasty.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
I don't get it.
Like, I don't get that. I don't understand why teams are willing to do that. But the other thing I heard with Cashman was that he refused to talk to the Red Sox.
He did.
Like, you can't do that. So every week I listen to Dan Levitard every day, Dan Levitard show every day because I think it's hilarious. Not everybody likes it, I get that, but they have David Sampson, who was a former VP of the Marlins before they sold to Derek Jeter and his group. So he comes on every week and he is unfiltered, and he was saying that he's like, you only get to work with 29 other teams. Why on earth would you cut one of those teams out? He's like, you've got to exhaust all of your options. Why would you eliminate one of your options when you can only work with 29 other guys? And I was like, that's an excellent point. You can't eliminate the Red Sox just because you hold a grudge against who they are. You know, like there's a massive, vast, and deep history of players going from Yankees to the Red Sox, the Red Sox to the Yankees, because players don't care. The front office shouldn't care.
Well, I mean,
you know, like the fans care, obviously, but the front office shouldn't.
It's interesting because some of the most blockbuster trades have been between those two teams. Like, I mean, in the history of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it goes all the way back and starts with Babe Ruth.
It really does.
You know?
Which is amazing. But I remember when Johnny Damon shaved his beard and cut his hair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, went from Red Sox.
That was, oh, man. That was something special. That was... So, yes, the Yankees did nothing this trade. I don't think it was all their fault. I don't think that it was, blameless either. I think, I agree with you. We should have picked up somebody helpful. And then, but here's what I will say. This young Yankees team, even with the current IL problem they're having, this young Yankees team is going to take this as a slap in the face, and they're going to say, fine, watch us do it. We're going to do it anyway. And they will.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they'll do it regardless. It's going to be hard without pitching.
Well, and now...
It'll be really hard without pitching.
Now, but...
Especially with the way they've played the last week and a half.
Yeah, but they whipped the Red Sox last night. Not whipped them, but they beat them 2-4. And Paxton went through 6. So, and he finally got his curveball back. Anyway, the Yankees are playing 19 games in 17 days, started yesterday, Friday. And today's Saturday. They're gonna play a day-night doubleheader against the Red Sox, and then another game against the Red Sox at home. So big time standings battle right now in the East.
Yeah, I was just jarred by the amount of runs they gave up to the Red Sox, but I do feel like on the other hand, though, you have to kind of have to throw out the records and everything when those two teams play.
Yeah,
because it is kind of in a vacuum, generally speaking.
Totally.
So, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be freaking out. And I always talk about how I'm such a staunch Yankee hater, but really it's just like, I'm not, because I really like the way this team's put together. I really like watching Aaron Judge play. Like, that guy's awesome. So, I'm not truly a Yankee hater. These days, I hate the Astros more than I hate the Yankees.
Oh, man. Who doesn't?
Because of the havoc that they've wreaked on the AL West.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So, no, I would really like to see this team do well. And I just, man, that pitching scares me. That's the only thing.
It's terrifying.
So, yeah.
If you're not scared, you're wrong. That's what I say.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You should be wrong. You should be scared. We should all be scared of Houston right now.
Yes.
So, what do you think of Cubs sending Carl Edwards Jr. to the Padres?
No, it's the move with Nick Castellanos that I think that the Cubs really did well with. Like, I was actually listening to a Cubs game the other day, since it was the Cubs and Brewers was the only game going, and that guy had a heck of a game.
Yeah,
he was great defensively. Was spraying the ball all over the field. Like, man, that's a Joe Madden kind of guy right there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I think he's going to do well there, and he's a solid little pickup, sneaky little pickup.
Yeah, it's sneaky.
All right, well, I think we've gone long enough with this. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, and we're going to finish up our our talk on steroids with Steroids Part 2.
Oh, steroids.
Hey babe, I'm headed to concessions. Do you want me to grab you something?
Yeah, anything, whatever you're getting.
Okay, I saw a burger. I'll probably grab that.
No, that doesn't sound good.
Okay, I think there's barbecue, probably some nachos.
I don't think I want either of those either. But just get me anything.
What do you want?
I saw a hot dog earlier.
Okay, I can do that.
Well, no.
Couples may quarrel, but baseball is for lovers. Shop the Lovers Collection at 9plusus.com.
All right, thanks for coming back with us, baseball family. To recap last week, what we were talking about, steroids and some of our thoughts, opinions, things like that on them. So we want to continue that conversation this week on this episode. Tiff is still with us. Brig is still with us. The whole gang's all here. Let's get back into it. All right, now, Brig, you have some questions for us to kind of get us back into to continue our conversation, to continue where we left off last week. What do you have for us?
Well, I just think it's important that we talk a little bit about the history of steroids and how it relates to Major League Baseball. So, first and foremost, in 1998, there's a jar of performance-enhancing precursor, right? A steroid precursor found in Mark McGwire's locker. And that kind of set this whole thing off, right? It was 1998. What's interesting is that it took 3 years for Major League Baseball to implement any sort of unilateral random drug testing program at the major league level. 3 years.
Yeah,
so
when I remember when they found that, it was all the talk was it was creatine.
Yeah, that's what they said.
It was creatine. Yeah, it was which is no big deal. But that was the conversations that McGwire got this big off creatine.
Nope.
No,
that's not possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not possible to get that big off of protein either. Let's just be clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the first question I have is, why did it take Major League Baseball 3 years to implement anything? Like, what do you guys think?
Well, I think part of it is, I know that Major League Baseball, particularly Rob Manfred, lately has been hiding behind the word logistics with like extending the netting.
Yeah.
But I think that's legitimately the case in this situation, that there was a lot that they had to go through with the Players Association, because that's something that has to be collectively bargained.
Right.
Like, you've got to talk to the Players Association and decide on something as far as what you're going to do with testing, because can they test for human growth?
They are testing. Yes, they are testing for HGH.
So that's right. Yeah, they can test for HGH, but for a long time they couldn't even do that.
Right.
Because it involved taking blood. You couldn't just do a urine sample and test for HGH. It was strictly anabolic steroids. So I think that was part of it. I don't want to say that Bud Selig liked the show that was being put on with steroids, but at the same time, viewership and attendance, everything was through the roof.
It was.
He had to have thought, let's ride this out for a little bit.
Oh, of course.
That
He
is an
had to have
interesting
just
thought.
been like, let's ride it out a little bit. I don't think he thought it was going to die down, but I think he was just like, let's take our time. Things are really, really good right now. And then, it's going to reach a fever pitch at a point where we're going to have to do something. And then let's kind of work our way into implementing something.
And guess what that fever pitch took shape of? The shape of that fever pitch hammer swing came in the form of the United States government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So the House...
Which, at the time I thought it was so funny. Like, why is the government getting involved with baseball? And now I understand.
Yeah. Now that we're adults.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yep.
So there was a sort of an edict, I guess, came out that said, you will do something about this, Major League Baseball. It actually came from Senator McCain from Arizona, was one of the biggest proponents of this, and Senator Dorgan as well from North Dakota. Anyway, they basically pushed Bud Selig and the Players Association to implement any sort of drug testing program. They called for something very strict, and obviously it all got negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement. But that was kind of the first time that Selig, right? He's like, okay, let's do it. Just like you said. And then they did a whole bunch of stuff in the minor leagues way before it got to the major league level with a 100% ban on this type of substance. So okay, I think it's self-evident, and you brought it up, Brad, as to why it took baseball so long to take action and why the government got involved. But is the government's response to performance enhancers, is it them meddling, or is it further proof of what, Tiff, you were saying earlier about, or last week about the social responsibility that baseball and baseball players have?
Well, of course, this is a political issue, so it depends on how you feel about how government should proceed when it comes to business, right? Because there is an ethical side to this. One of the problems, of course, is that if something like performance enhancing drugs is easy to get and is accepted in use in one agency, it will spread like wildfire. So, of course, the government has a interest in keeping those things tight, because once it's accepted in one society, it spreads to the rest. So I don't want to get too far into politics or anything. However, it's important to understand that the government's part in this has to do with not trying to control, MLB, but that there is an ethical issue of the acceptance of performance enhancing drugs in an association.
I agree with that.
Especially something so well loved by so many people in the country.
Which doesn't necessarily justify government involvement, but I do think that the ethics, if not checked, do demand some a greater level of legal involvement, whether that be, in this case, it's the government.
So Tiff, to kind of piggyback on your point of it being an ethical issue with the politics, I mean, I look at it as straight up a legal issue, because testosterone, anabolic steroids, I mean, again, the pharmaceutical side of me coming out, that's a Schedule 3 drug, which, to put that in perspective, that's like Tylenol with codeine,
right?
Is a Schedule 3.
It's a controlled substance.
Controlled substance. It's one step above like oxycodone and OxyContin, and like amphetamines. Like,
yeah,
I guess one step below on the scheduling. It's not quite as restricted, but it's about as restricted as you can get it, but still be legal. It proves that it does have a medical use, but it's also it can definitely be abused, which is what was going on in Major League Baseball. It wasn't just the fact that these guys were juicing to hit a bunch of home runs and get a bunch of money. It's the fact that they're using a drug illegally and probably obtaining it illegally. So I think the fact that these guys were getting suspended and publicly shamed is a lot better than what could have been happening as far as jail time.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because there were trainers, and listen to the Dan Le Batard show, and he always refers to these guys who were like the steroid suppliers, like Balco, and then I can't remember the guy who was in Miami who was supplying to Alex Rodriguez, but he always refers to him as a doctor who's not a doctor.
Yeah, right.
We have this supplement for you.
Yeah.
It may or may not have steroids.
Cool, man. Let me just have it.
These guys may or may not be obtaining this stuff legally, and they're distributing it probably illegally. So there's a lot of not good things that are involved with this, in addition to the harm that's being done to their bodies as well.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because in 2008, with the Roger Clemens thing, for those of you that don't know, Roger Clemens continues to deny to this day that he ever took performance enhancers. But it's interesting that his trainer said, I am willing to go to jail over this issue.
Yep.
So it's
because
it's what you're saying.
he probably got it in some back alley somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, metaphorically speaking.
Right.
But yeah, he probably got it through some illegal back channel to supply it.
Yep. So that's a great point, that if it is illegal, right? Like, I don't even know what to say about that. It's illegal. You have to stop.
Yeah. Like, I think that was the big crackdown of the government, is what you're letting happen here is illegal. I listened to an interview last week or a couple weeks ago with Bud Selig where he was saying, you know, we cleaned up the cocaine era. It's like, whoa, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. You should have. That shouldn't have even been a thing. And then you should have gone in and said, oh, wait, steroids are illegal too. You know, and it was almost like they looked the other way because, I mean, Jose Canseco was a guy who wasn't even sneaky about it.
Not even sneaky. No. And then he got hit in the head with a baseball and it all came out.
Steroid needles fell out of his pocket. Everything. It was just this whole thing.
It is this whole thing.
It's kind of interesting that maybe steroids weren't totally understood at all, because it seems like it, even though in the past, like way back, say in the 1970s, there were, thinking back to the Olympics, there were Olympic athletes who had used steroids. So, you know, now we know of them as, you know, they had, they called it doping, you know, so they had, so they're not the same type of steroids that the baseball players were using. So this is, you know, going forward in the future, new substances are coming out. So of course, when these substances were showing up in, you know, MLB, they hadn't been actually banned yet. And so, you know, then you do have to get the government involved, because now we have a new substance that is being used for performance enhancement. Is it dangerous? Does it need to be placed on the FDA's list? Is it, you know, then it's much more of it's a larger picture question than just, you know, concentrated on MLB, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about steroids in the 70s. Sorry to backtrack just a little bit, but there was actually a great documentary that I watched. I think it was in high school. I took a sports lit class because that's kind of how I roll.
No.
Yeah, in case you didn't notice. But but we watched this documentary called Doping for Gold, and it's actually about the East German Olympic team. And they did it was a state-sponsored doping program, and the athletes didn't know at the time. They were just like getting their quote-unquote vitamins every day, right? But it turned out they were steroids, and it's jarring to see the effects of the steroids on those athletes. A lot of them, specifically women. I mean, there's a couple of them who went through gender reassignment surgery because they were like, well, I'm basically a man now, so I might as well, because they were given such high doses. And I honestly think if everybody had seen that, like if anybody who ever considered doing steroids saw that, they would turn and run.
Yeah.
Because it is truly alarming.
Just from your description, I'm like, nope, that's not for me. Nope.
Yeah, it is truly alarming, the effects of those steroids. And granted, like I said, it was incredibly high doses because those doctors had no idea the long-term effects that those drugs were going to have on those women. But no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't care if there's millions and millions of dollars involved, hundreds of millions of dollars involved. I want to be able to live my life normally when I
Absolutely.
I don't want that.
So speaking of the 70s, and then this will segue into my next point. So Lyle Alzado is a very common name in the steroid conversation. He played for the Oakland Raiders in the NFL during the 70s and 80s. And he, you know, died this horrible, tragic, very long-term death because of complications from performance-enhancing drugs, steroids. And I saw a documentary about him when I was in high school too, and it was the same thing. I was like, whoa, no, thank you, never again. I don't want to even think about it. So then it's interesting, though, when we get into, like Tiff was saying, like what is banned and when, and, you know, this chronological path that we're following as as medicine and pharmacology evolves, a lot of these players who are hip to this kind of stuff and their trainers, they're staying one step ahead of the game. Back to the NFL again, Bill Romanowski is one of my favorite football players of all time. He wrote a book called Romo, is My Life on the Edge. And it's fascinating, but he talks about how he's like shamelessly admitted to using performance enhancers throughout his whole career.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I never used anything that was banned. I never used anything that was illegal, but I did everything I could. Networking connections, personal financial sacrifices, whatever it was, to stay one step ahead of the game. So as soon as I, it's like he said, I was using it and then they banned it and I moved to the next one, because the medical community, right, this kind of shady medical community, is one step ahead every single time anyway. So is that going on in today's Major League game? Like, is that going on in today's baseball?
And because it's such an underground thing, and it is, right? Players know that what they're taking is supposed to help them grow muscle or, think better, think faster, move faster, perform better, right? That's the whole thing. But I think that there's not a lack of understanding as a whole. Unless you're a medical professional, I don't know that you could really look at a new substance that's on the market that has been presented to you and say, oh, you know what, that's probably a steroid and I shouldn't take it. That common sense that should be there might not be. And I found this really interesting quote. The Major League Baseball Commissioner Fay Vincent, so this was from 1991. After the rumors came out about Jose Canseco, he said, we could have done a lot more lecturing and lobbying and educating, but I didn't know anything about steroids. And I think that we also need to understand this piece of the picture is that there's, as this underground medical creation of new steroids is being done, there's also the chase of needing to educate everybody in the athletic community on those things. And you know what? It's just the drug is always going to be ahead of the education. It's just going to happen. So this is part of the unfortunate part that is real, and we need to understand and not always be so hard on maybe the commissioner or the government for not getting those drugs on the list as quickly. Is because the pharmaceutical companies who are producing these are always one or two steps ahead.
Oh yeah, the pharmaceutical companies who specialize in stuff, like, that's their thing. It's their bread and butter, right? So they're going to try to stay a step ahead. And I try not to bang on commissioners too much for that, because they're businessmen. I don't expect them to understand the science behind all that, and most of the guys who work for them are businessmen too, right? So I'm sure that they don't have a pharmacist consultant on staff somewhere where they can say, hey, what's the update this week on steroids and maskers and concealers and things like that, like what are you reading, what's the word on the street,
exactly,
right.
like that meme of Steve Buscemi where he walks up with his hat backwards and his skateboard. Hello, fellow kids.
Right.
Gonna send some pharmacist down to some shady clinic where he's like, I'd like to buy some steroids, please.
Yep.
Like, they don't have. I guarantee they don't have that going on. So they don't know exactly what's happening. So there are going to be guys who are doping in every single sport, because you can't keep it 100% clean, and because the market is always going to exist, because there's always going to be demand. There's always going to be money in it, and anywhere there's money, there's going to be people willing to take that money,
or willing to try something new without truly understanding what they're taking. Right. I just had to put this in there because I have an acquaintance who is a professional athlete, and she went to compete in a competition. I'm not going to give too many details because I don't want anything to get back to her, but this is her story. She had been taking a supplement that had been suggested to her. It was, she said, I looked up the ingredients. It seemed fine. But when she got to this competition and she is in the top of what she does, she was given a blood test, or not a blood test, excuse me, a urine test, and she came up with a marker of a new steroid that had been recently banned. And of course, then she couldn't compete. And she, she's talking about this, and she's being really forward about it because she wanted to talk about it. It was a true mistake. And she says, be careful of these new supplements that are coming out, because you really just don't know what it is that you're taking. And her thing now is, she says, I'm sticking to a diet and nothing synthetic because the risk is now too high.
Mm-hmm.
It's too high. And, she had to go through that horrible pain of not being able to compete for several years because that was the consequence for hitting that marker.
Well, and that's part of the problem too, right? Is a lot of this stuff is so chemically close that there's going to be a marker, because that's another part of the industry, is how close can we get it? How close to that edge can we get to help these athletes gain the edge that they want? That they want to try to provide as much of the benefit without going over the top. Because when I was a long time ago, many years ago, I wanted to be a pharmacist. So that's why I'm all into this medical stuff. Like when all the steroid stuff was coming out, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is like my two worlds colliding. But one of the things I saw was there are certain drugs that the chemical skeleton is identical. However, if you change one small chemical group, like essentially move one carbon and three hydrogens from one spot across to the other side of the chemical, has a completely different effect on it.
That is amazing.
That tiny little change. And if you're doing that with those supplements, then that basic chemical compound is like that structure is gonna show up, and I can totally see that happening. That she's like, oh, it's not a performance enhancing drug, but it has a similar chemical makeup, and I think
that
that's
is
how that
amazing. That is amazing,
so
and it's so like I just am feeling so much empathy for athletes in this moment, because this is new information for me. I have no clue about any of this chemistry stuff that has to do, you know what I mean? This is new information for me, and I feel like it's, I don't know, I'm just feeling the empathy, like a player or another athlete could take a supplement thinking that it's safe, and then it turns out to be it turns out to not be, and that would be horribly disappointing.
Okay, let's ask the
big...
Sorry.
Moving on.
Sorry.
No more empathy. Stop it right now.
We got to stop with the empathy thing.
Okay.
I have two questions. The first question is, do you consider performance-enhancing drugs cheating? Yes or no, Brad?
Yes.
Tiff?
Yes.
So do I. I think it's cheating. That begs the next question. Do players accused or found guilty of, let's say found guilty of, performance-enhancing usage, do they belong even in the Hall of Fame conversations?
I'll go last.
Okay.
So I call.
Tiff, do you want to ante up, or do you want to?
I'm going to, yes.
Where are the blinds? Who's got the big blind?
Oh, that's funny. You know what? I do not believe that they belong in the Hall of Fame, and here's why. And again, I think when I think of athletes, there are two kinds of athletes in my life. There are baseball players and there are Olympians. And that's the truth. Those are the only athletes I pay attention to. And in the Olympics, if you are found, even retroactively, if you're found to have been using performance-enhancing drugs, you are stripped of your title. You lose your gold medal or whatever it is. and you are no longer listed as a winner of of the Olympics for the year that you competed and won. And I believe that same severity should be brought, or should be, it's not brought in. It's not like it doesn't exist. The same severity should be in baseball as well, because why would you put on a pedestal someone who changed their body to play, chemically changed their body to play the game better, where others did not, and deserve the accolade more. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. I feel like we're humans, not not cyborgs, not chemically enhanced people. Real humans deserve to be in the hall of fame, because they truly did something amazing.
I agree with everything you've said, and for all the same reasons. But I would also add that baseball is obsessed with its past as much as it's obsessed with its present and its future, even maybe more so than its future. And if we are to maintain our level of wonderment and awe, and things like that, then we have to give credence to, we have to keep the game pure, I guess is what I'm saying. As pure as we can. Now, I know that there's going to be some gray area in there, and we don't know what was going on in the 20s and 30s and 40s and on, right, with greenies and different substances that are mentioned in the history. We don't know. Should we ban the Miracle Mets from any conversation because of cocaine? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, right?
Well, that's the problem with reflecting back, especially in a time where there are no surviving members of that time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Someone that was an adult in the 20s. I'm sorry, but they don't exist anymore.
Right.
So there's no one to defend them. There's no one to actually have the conversation with. And so, unfortunately, we can't strip them of their titles. We can't strip them of their accolades. And would we want to? We don't know. We don't know them.
Yeah.
In that time.
I agree. I just think it's sad that we even have to have this conversation, because I see it from all of the sides. I get why the players are doing it, wittingly or unwittingly. I understand who's in it to gain financially and why you would feel compelled to do so. I understand the fans' perspective and what we want. And on both sides, I know fans that feel very strongly about performance enhancers benefiting the game, and I hear people all the time. I have conversations with people who argue that it should be legalized, it should be normalized, and by doing so, if you want to be better than everyone else, or if you want to be as good as everyone else, then you'll take the drugs too. I've heard that conversation, and it's interesting. It, for the same reasons, it's interesting that we want to just ban them all outright. But here's what I think. This is my final point, and then I want to hear what Brad thinks. Baseball tells stories, and that's why we're here. We're here because of the stories that we've heard when we were kids about players in the past. We're here because of the stories we experienced throughout our lives. We're here because, and we will stick around and continue watching baseball and being fans because of the stories that are yet to come. And we want that. There's this cosmic, ethereal connection to the game through the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that are told on the field, off the field. And I'm sorry, there is no story without a villain. There just isn't. And so I don't think that this thing will go away. I don't think it's I think it's the boogeyman we'll always deal with, and that's okay with me. I like bad guys. You have to have a bad guy.
I mean, we have the evil empire in baseball. I mean, we have the Yankees.
Shots fired.
Wow.
Amazing.
You have to have a bad guy, though.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And as far as baseball telling a story, I totally agree with you. I mean, and with the Baseball Hall of Fame, I mean, what is the Hall of Fame? It's a museum, right?
Yeah.
So I don't feel like you can tell the story. Like, I don't feel like you can have a museum that tells the story and the history of baseball, unfortunately, without guys who juiced, without guys who use steroids.
Interesting.
No, I'm not saying put Barry Bonds or Mark McGwire next to my favorite player of all time, Ken Griffey Jr., because I would probably throw up, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I would have a hard time standing there looking at the plaque of my favorite player, my hero, as a child and an adult, I'll be honest with you.
It's okay. It's okay to admit that.
Having and having the plaques of those guys right next to him. Like, I don't know if I could stomach that, because it was so frustrating to me to see those guys out hitting Griffey all those years, and then to come find out that it was because of steroids that they were. That made me feel better, but then the fact that they've reached the same place he did, that would make me sick. So my caveat is to say that maybe you have a wing or a hall that says steroid era. Have a different place for those guys. Because I'll say this, out of all the guys who use steroids, not all of them were setting records. Not all of them were reaching milestones.
Yeah.
Because they said with steroids, it made good players great and great players legendary. Yeah. And it sure did. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, Bonds and McGwire, those guys were legendary. Clemens, if he did indeed use steroids, which, you know, all evidence points to it, he was a legendary pitcher.
Absolutely.
You know, so I feel like, yeah, it did its job for those guys, but there were other guys it didn't do that job for. Yeah, it kept them at the big league level. It may have got them a pay raise at some point or another, but those guys were another level, and they probably would have been without it, but they were a whole nother level. And I do feel like that level deserves some kind of recognition, but not with the guys who were at that level without it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And
that I think that if you're going to put those guys in the hall, you've got to put them in a different place. Like I said, maybe a steroid era wing or hallway or something, but something that tells the story of that time in baseball, that this is something that happened. These are the guys who benefit from it. And at the time, it was a hell of a show. We really enjoyed it. But now it makes us all sick to our stomach to think about it. And this is their story.
Yeah. We can call it the asterisk addict. The attic.
There you go.
We'll put them in the attic.
Yeah.
And there'll just be a big
there you go. I think that's a perfect
spot. Just be a little asterisk.
Or a shed. A shed out in the North 40. If you really want to go see these guys, go look
next
at them.
time you're in the hamlet of Cooperstown, you can say, "Where's the asterisk cellar?" It'll be down there with the rats and the wine.
Yeah, so I do feel like there is a spot for them, but not with the guys who.
No, I like that.
I
like that. So just to give you an idea, for those of you listening, I'm gonna end this segment with a few of the names that are on this list, and some of them are a little bit shocking. Some of them we've mentioned. So these are the guys who have been accused of, and in most cases, are the most notorious performance enhancing users in baseball. We have Barry Bonds, obviously, Eric Gagne, Bartolo Colon. Sit on that one for a minute. Melky Cabrera, Manny Ramirez, Armando Rios, Mark McGwire, Alex Rodriguez, Andy Pettit, Shane Monahan, Paul Bird, Brian Roberts. I feel like I'm reciting some sort of eulogy. These are our fallen comrades or something.
They are.
That's what I was going to say. The fallen.
Right? David.
Yeah. Well, Alex Rodriguez twice.
And weeping over it, admittedly, right? Yeah,
Boobing.
Seriously. After he slapped the ball out of that. Never mind. David Segui, however you say his name, Brad. I don't know.
Segui.
David Segui. Jason Grimsley. John Rocker. Paxton Crawford. Jim Leyritz, Rafael Palmiro, Wally Joyner, holy moly, Tom House, Jose Canseco, Gary Sheffield, Benito Santiago, Jason and Jeremy Giambi, Ken Camentini.
Ken Caminetti.
Caminetti, is that how you say his name?
Oh, you just add an extra T.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It was a list. He
and
was reading off a list.
Ken Caminiti. So anyway, those are the names that, I mean, I was shocked by, like Bartolo Colon. I'm like, whoa, who remembers that, right? But it's true.
Well, I mean, there's a reason he's still pitching.
Yep. So anyway, just let that sink in. And those are just the ones that are well known.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. If we're going to swing hard, if we're going to, lower the boom, it's going to have a massive impact even on today's players. Robbie Cano just got hung up for performance enhancers a couple of months ago.
Last year, yep.
Yeah. Stephen Wright.
Last year when he's with the Mariners.
Stephen Wright just came off of suspension a couple weeks ago.
The comedian?
No,
I'm just kidding.
The pitcher for the Red Sox. Oh my gosh, Brad. I do love Stephen Wright's comedy, though.
He's the best.
So freaking funny.
So funny.
Did I not get the name right? Oh, I did. Stephen Wright. Okay.
No, it's Stephen Wright.
Just one of those moments that you question. You're like, I think I know what I'm talking about.
For the record, the comedian Stephen Wright is a Red Sox fan. So take that. Put that in your blog and post it.
There you go. There it is.
All right. Sorry, baseball family. This went a little bit long today, but I feel like we covered a lot of good ground here. As always, let us know what you think. Let's have this conversation ongoing. And when you get a chance, jump on the shop.9plusus.com, and pick yourself up some great baseball t-shirts and hats. And don't forget that it supports a great cause. 10% of everything we do goes to supporting charity, specifically getting baseball equipment to kids who can't otherwise get it for themselves.
And don't forget to subscribe, rate, review the podcast. Let us know what you think, share your thoughts. And we're going to have a mailbag coming up here pretty soon. So send us your questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks, whatever you want. We will address them on the podcast and give you a shout out. And once again, baseball family, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next week.